Welcome back to DBC. Today we are continuing with Toxic Charity by Robert Lupton, and we're going to talk about two chapters today. The first one he calls the anatomy of giving, and then the idea of needs versus relationships in charitable giving and work. All right, so we're going to hop into he calls the anatomy of giving. I think a better title for the chapter is the psychological mechanics of giving. What's going on psychologically during giving? And he begins, so I got to say this chapter was a bit dark psychologically. It was really revealing and really powerful. He begins with this story of Christmas Eve of 1981, where he and some church members had adopted a family to give them presents. So they're at this house and they're giving all the presents and the kids are all excited. And he notices that the father of the family silently snuck away in his own house. The kids didn't notice. They were too excited opening their presents up. The mom did see the dad go away, and then the mom ended up having to lie to the children later after they'd opened all the presents and kind of looked around and realized that dad wasn't there. The mom lied to the kids about the children, and there was this embarrassment and emasculation on the side of the parents, the father especially, so much that he had to leave the room in his own house. And then this idea that the message the children received on this night was that good stuff comes from rich people that are out there, and it's free. This is the message the children received. And he includes a really powerful quote dovetailing on this story from Jacques Ellul, who's a French philosopher. And he says that almsgiving affirms the superiority of the giver, who thus gains a point on the recipient, binds him, demands gratitude, humiliates him, and reduces him to a lower state than he had before. So this is pretty dark stuff, sort of philosophically and given how people traditionally think of charity work. So Lupton also noted things from this night and later in his work in charity, which is that he very seldomly received direct eye contact from the recipients of giving. Additionally, bent forward posture, sort of self-effacing and shrinking of the person in a body language sense, and that weak smiles and meek thank yous, and how not only all these indicators of sort of feeling less and emasculated about themselves, and that their responses turn initially from gratitude, which according to Ellul is forced gratitude, becomes an expectation, and then becomes entitlement. And he gives an example of a higher level of parity in charity, or versus charity. And this is a church that he belonged to, changed from having a free clothing closet to a thrift shop. So they used to have a closet where anyone could come and just get free clothing, and it was this idea that gratitude turned into an expectation, turned into entitlement. And initially there was resistance by the clients at first, but within a year the old model was totally forgotten. And there were three big differences, and you'll kind of notice where we're going with this, that the recipients were now working as paid employees at the thrift shop. They were being greeted as valued customers when they would come in to shop as well, and not charity cases, and that everybody loves discovering a bargain, he says. So these were three. This is an example. He's not just crapping on charitable work and saying it's no good, just throw it all out, but providing an alternative. And there's this idea that the low-income neighbors would much rather work to purchase gifts for their children than to stand in free toy lines, because they had a similar thing from this Adopt a Family program too. They had an old toy shop. People could buy presents for the poor, the needy, and they would come they would have a special store for them. They have to pay for them at a discounted rate, but they would have to pay and earn money to buy these things. And there was not this emasculation and this running away and shame, really. And then he goes on for a while at the end of the chapter about being a balance of mercy and justice, proper charitable giving, and that mercy should move in the direction of development and justice to do more good than harm. So the next chapter is chapter 4, needs versus relationships. And again, continuing with a similar theme, he talks about the difference between a food pantry giveaways and food co-ops. So what's the difference there beyond psychological that we've talked about already? Are the relationships between volunteers and the recipients. And that there's a sort of this dynamic of need-based relationships. And the dynamic there is that, well, first of all, that they're seldom healthy, and they do not reduce the need that they so-called seek to alleviate. And then the idea, the dynamic here is that over time, when one problem is solved, another problem must be presented in order for the relationship dynamic to continue. If the victim or the recipient no longer needs a solution, the rescuer is not needed, and the relationship ends, or it must dramatically change. So the poor in this situation remain an outgroup, an other, sort of over there, and there's this separateness, and that the recipients are rarely members of the dispersing or distributing community. So there's this gap, and that the resources are owned by the insiders or the givers, and rules are devised by those that are in control. And a good question to ask when you're looking at a situation is, will the recipients be working a system to get something for themselves, or joining a community and building relationships? And the idea there is, how can outsiders or outgroups become insiders? And they must become dispensers of the goods, whether it's food or presence, and the authors of the rules as well, how it works, and the builders of community and relationships. So we'll continue next time with more on toxic charity. Thanks for watching.